On Friday morning in the South Lake anchorage just off the Alligator River, I had the generator running to warm up the boat for breakfast. Right after breakfast, the generator started making a very loud, very high-pitched squealing sound. It smelled like the generator was eating its fan belt. I had no time to deal with the problem since I was just about ready to pull up the anchor, so I shut down the generator. It would have to wait its turn for some attention. My new Rokna anchor had done a great job of holding me in place the past few days in South Lake as some stormy weather passed through our area. I ran down the Alligator River, not seeing a single alligator all day, and then started the long passage down the canal that connects the Alligator River with the Pungo River. I anchored north of Belhaven in the Pungo River, way up in a marshy area. I could not adjust the generator belt tension because of a rusted bolt, so I had to use the main engines for heat and electricity. I remained at the anchorage the following day, waiting for the wind to die down. The big afternoon project was adjusting the engine idle speed of my diesel engines. At night, I found I was in a rural enough area to be able to see the Milky Way, but it was too cold to linger long outside. It was clear and cold Sunday morning as I hauled up the anchor. During the day, a sneaky sailing catamaran behind me was steadily gaining on me. Each time we changed course at a buoy, he would take a shortcut by cutting the corner inside the buoy. Eventually, he passed me. It was the second time I have been passed by a faster sailboat on this trip. I pulled into Oriental Harbor late in the afternoon. There is a public dock there, but it was full, so I anchored out with some other boats. It would have been interesting to dinghy ashore and explore the town, but stormy weather was on the way, and the Oriental anchorage was not the best place to hide. I also needed to find a mechanic who could dislodge the rusty bolt on my generator. On Monday, I crossed the Neuse River and headed into Adams Creek, which led to the Adams Creek Canal, which takes boats down to Beaufort and Morehead City. I stopped for the day well short of Beaufort, pulling into Jarrett Bay Boatworks to hide from the approaching bad weather for a few days and look for a mechanic to solve my rusty generator bolt problem. Jarrett Bay is a huge boatyard, and they have 3 different diesel engine shops there. All 3 were too busy to help me right away, but one said they might be able to look into my problem in a few days. The bad news was that it was Thursday before a mechanic was able to come to my boat, and even then, he was unable to dislodge the bolt. He said the only way to get it out of there was to drill it out with a right-angled drill. The good news is the mechanic was able to free up the bracket that is used to adjust the belt tension. This allowed me to get the generator operational once again. The rusted bolt was not hurting anything, and I had other things to worry about, so it just stayed in there. By Friday morning, I had my laundry done, my shopping was done, and I had a generator that worked. It was time to head down the ICW again. In the afternoon, I dropped anchor in front of Swansboro. It was a nice enough anchorage adjacent to the downtown waterfront area, but the current really ripped through the anchorage at a good clip. Not only that, but it changed directions every 6 hours. I decided to take the dinghy ashore for a walk around Swansboro on Saturday. The last thing I expected to find in the little town was an Irish pub, but there it was, and I had lunch there. After lunch, I had a nice long walk before taking the dinghy back to the boat. Sunday was another nice day, and I got the anchor back on board and continued down the ICW. I almost ran aground in one spot. Some small channel buoys marked an area where the ICW channel needed to jog around a shallow spot, and I almost kept going straight down the middle of the waterway right into the shallows. Fortunately, my Garmin chart plotter began yelling at me that the water was getting dangerously shallow. I was just lucky enough that I didn't go aground there. My travels took me through the Camp Lejeune Marine Corps base. Sometimes pleasure boats are not allowed to pass through Camp Lejeune if the Marines are doing certain types of training, but everything was quiet on that Sunday and I was able to pass through with no issues. I pulled into Mile Hammock Bay to anchor for 2 nights. The anchorage is unusually large and a great place to spend the night. However, I suspect the Marine Corps own all the land around the anchorage, so it might not be the best location for shore leave. One of the cool things about the anchorage is that if it got really quiet, you could hear the ocean surf breaking on the beach, which was only a short distance away. There are several spots on the ICW where you can look to the east and actually see the ocean as you go by. As I was doing my pre-start engine checks Tuesday morning, I noticed the seawater pump on the generator was leaking. It was possible that my generator belt problems were not caused by a loose belt, but caused instead by a seized water pump pulley. When I had examined the generator pump at the boatyard, I noticed that the pulley was kind of hard to move, and it took a little while to get it moving freely again. In any case, it looked like the new generator seawater pump was needed to be replaced in the very near future. I had a relatively short day ahead of me, heading for a marina in Surf City for the night. During my stay back in the Jarrett boatyard, I had been talking to a delivery captain who was very enthusiastic about the Navionics app on his cell phone, which contained charts and other marine information. I tried it, and I liked it so much that I loaded Navionics on both my cell phone and my tablet. The tablet I now mounted below my Garmin chart plotter. The Navionics charts were much more detailed and much more accurate than the Garmin charts. My one-night stay in the Surf City Marina gave me the opportunity to stock up on groceries and take some nice walks. Many houses there were still cleaning up by the mess left behind by Hurricane Florence earlier that year. On Wednesday, I made the short hop from Surf City Marina to a nice anchorage in Topsail Sound. I had waterfront homes on one side of me and a large marsh on the other side. It was cool and windy there, but there was a beautiful Thanksgiving full moon at night. During my stay at the Topsail anchorage, I finished up some varnishing. It was just barely warm enough for varnishing in the afternoon, and very chilly in the morning and evening. I also mounted a rear view mirror at the upper helm station. In the past, I found that it was easy to not notice boats coming up from behind me, especially those sneaky catamaran sailboats. On Friday, I pulled up the anchor and headed down the ICW toward Carolina Beach. The weather was sunny, but it was one of those days where the afternoon sun reflecting off the water was brutal on my poor eyes. I had chosen Carolina Beach as a good anchorage to hide from stormy weather predicted on Saturday. The anchor held well all through a windy Friday night, but on Saturday morning an enthusiastic squall came through and dragged my boat across the anchorage and halfway across the adjacent boat channel. I had to get the anchor up in the wind and rain and re-anchor the boat, a job that was made much easier by my electric windlass and the electric windlass controls I installed before starting this trip. When Sunday rolled around, we were back to sunny skies. My trip on this day would take me through Snow Cut and then down the Cape Fear River into the town of Southport. I had timed my departure in order to catch the ebb tide in the Cape Fear River. I assumed that the tidal current in Snow Cut would also be in my favor, but it turned out to be flowing enthusiastically against me until I reached the river. I ended up staying 3 nights at the Southport Marina. I was mostly waiting for some mail to be sent to me, but I eventually learned that the UPS store had forgotten to send it. In Southport, I picked up my next shipmate, Lynn, from Texas. Lynn and I had some great food in Southport, and we were able to stock up on groceries, and we had a nice walking tour around town, including a visit to the Southport Maritime Museum. During our taxi ride back from the grocery store, the taxi driver told us about some very curious street names. Lord, How, Dry, I Am. What do you think? Pure coincidence? When we headed out Wednesday morning, it was cold and breezy, but the sun was out and the forecast looked optimistic. In the afternoon, we set down the anchor in Milliken Cove, where the Calabash River empties into the ICW, right on the border between North Carolina and South Carolina. It was a scenic enough anchorage, but not terribly wide. Fortunately, the winds were light, and the current seemed to help keep the boat lined up with the deep water in the middle of the channel.